Hello, my name is Mrs. April Maska and I am the president of the Women's Club of West Deptford. Some of you may remember me as a teacher at Oakview Elementary School. The Women's Club is a group of 45 women whose goal is to share significant ideas, educate, and participate in community service activities while having fun and making friends. We serve West Deptford and the surrounding communities. The Greater Federation of Women's Club began in 1890. The New Jersey Federations of Women's Club has been around since 1894. The West Deptford Women's Club was established in 1993. Our purpose today is to share the significance of voting, the suffrage movement, and how it affects you. We have some amazing women who will be sharing important history and information with you today regarding the women's right to vote. Our narrator for this program is Mrs. Chris Taylor, a longtime member of the Women's Club of West Deptford and very active in all aspects of the club. She is currently chair of the Health and Wellness Committee. After graduating from the University of Pennsylvania, she worked as an OB/GYN nurse practitioner, diabetes educator, and nursing instructor for Drexel University. In 2014, Mrs. Taylor received the Gloucester County Women of Achievement Award. It is my pleasure to introduce Mrs. Chris Taylor.
Hi students, I'm delighted to talk with you today about voting, particularly the history of the women's suffrage movement, since 2020 marked the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment guaranteeing women the right to vote. You will be making very important personal and political decisions in the near future. Your vote counts. If you remember nothing else from this talk, remember this: your vote counts every day, always. The word suffrage means the right to vote in political elections. From the founding of the U.S., women and black men were excluded from voting. The campaign for women's suffrage began in earnest before the Civil War. Many American women were beginning to rally against what historians have called the cult of true womanhood. That is the idea that the only true woman was a pious, submissive wife and mother, only concerned with home and family. Women couldn't own property, control their own income, or even vote. Men were concerned about if women got the right to vote, they would wear extravagant hairstyles, show their ankles, even run for office. And on the right, you'll see that a woman is slapping a man with a baby. I am not sure what's going on there. Maybe she wants him to take care of the baby. I don't know, but it doesn't look good. The message was that if women gained suffrage, their behavior would change and they wouldn't perform their domestic duties. During this time, this was the 1840s, women such as Lucretia Mott and Elizabeth Cady Stanton were abolitionists and admirable speakers. In July of 1848, a convention was held in Stanton's hometown of Seneca Falls, New York, and issued a declaration that called for women's suffrage, the right to women to have educational and employment opportunities also. And you'll recognize this next slide from the Declaration of Independence, except for one very important word. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This was followed by the first National Convention in Worcester, Massachusetts, and then one in Syracuse in 1852, where Stanton and the dynamic suffragist Susan B. Anthony became the leaders of this movement for the next 50 years. That's 2.5 generations that they led this movement. The movement slowed during the Civil War, after which the 14th and 15th Amendments to the Constitution were passed and raised familiar questions of suffrage and citizenship. The 14th extends the Constitution's protection to all citizens and defines them as male, not female. The 15th, ratified in 1870, guarantees black men the right to vote. However, Jim Crow laws were passed to enforce racial segregation, poll taxes, literacy tests, reciting the Constitution. These were just some of the challenges put before black men for almost 100 years until the Civil Rights Act in 1964 and the Voting Rights Act in 1965. In 1890, two events happened. The National American Woman Association brought several women's groups together to form one national organization. And Wyoming entered the Union as the first state whose constitution gave women the right to vote. One state, 1890. Vigorous campaigns were conducted to persuade state legislatures to back the suffrage movement. In the next 25 years, various individual states yielded to these demands and let women vote. By 1918, women had acquired equal suffrage with men in 15 states. In this picture, you can see that some men were opposed to women's suffrage, some were for it, and obviously the women were advocating for it. Then, on March 3rd, 1913, Alice Paul emerges as a leader and initiates and organizes the first national demonstration for women's suffrage in D.C. It was called the Women's Suffrage Parade and occurred 65 years after Elizabeth Cady Stanton organized the very first Women's Rights Convention in Seneca Falls, New York. 8,000 women and some men gathered and marched down Pennsylvania Avenue. Procession was led by women clad in armor, astride a white horse, followed by 26 floats, 9 bands, and banners of purple, gold, and white. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Mardi Gras. One black suffragist, Ida B. Wells, born into slavery, defied demands that black women march in the back of this parade. She came around through the spectators to the front of the parade, linked arms with the white suffragists from her home state of Illinois, and created quite a commotion. She had been one of the founders of the NAACP in 1909. And then in 1920, she was posthumously awarded a Pulitzer Prize special citation for her journalism on the vicious violence against blacks during the era of lynching. It's no coincidence that this parade took place the day before Woodrow Wilson's presidential inauguration. Remember, March 4th was the day of the inauguration then, not January 20th like today. And the suffragists sought to maximize attention on their event by having it that day. President Wilson was cordial toward the suffragists, but gave them an uninterested reception. However, they were persistent. This picture shows the parade with the spectators on the side and the women marching in the middle. This next picture then shows the spectators attacking the women. It was awful, it was mayhem, and many women were hurt. This shows you a picture of the women on either side, actual pictures from the parade, and in the middle is the beautiful purple, gold, and white colors of the woman who led the parade. And this is a float that was used in the parade. Meanwhile, a splinter group in 1916 called the National Woman's Party, founded by Alice Paul, focused on more radical tactics, hunger strikes, force feedings, White House pickets, aimed at publicity for the cause. She was arrested 7 times and imprisoned 3 times. And this is a picture of the women demanding that Alice Paul be released and that to ask for freedom for women is not a crime. By 1917, women were picketing outside the White House 6 days a week. They held large signs demanding that President Wilson support suffrage. The protests infuriated Wilson and much of the public. These women were arrested, jailed, and charged with obstructing traffic. They were sentenced to 60 days in the workhouse. There, they were subjected to brutal treatment, force feedings, and unsanitary conditions. With force feedings, they would actually take a tube and put it down the woman's nose, into the back of her mouth, into the stomach, and literally force feed these women so they would not die on their watch. Here are the women being dragged away by the police. And here the women are asking President Wilson how much longer they must wait for liberty. And they say that liberty is the fundamental demand of the human spirit. Word traveled fast about this strengthening public opinion in favor of a constitutional amendment. Wilson gradually changed his mind as the U.S. fought in World War I. He encouraged the adoption of the federal amendment on September 18, 1918. He had questioned how it would look for the U.S. to fight for liberty around the world while half of its citizens were denied that right. This is a picture of the country in 1919 and who was allowed to have full suffrage and non-suffrage. And you can see that full suffrage was mostly in the West. Primary suffrage, meaning that you could vote in primaries, was in Texas and Arkansas. Presidential suffrage, meaning you could vote in a presidential election, was most of the Midwest. And the eastern border was non-suffrage, except for New York. Then, on June 4th, 1919, the 19th Amendment guaranteeing women the right to vote was passed by Congress and ratified on August 18, 1920. It took over a year to be ratified by the necessary 36 states. The suffragists were led by Carrie Chapman Catt, who presented her winning plan for achieving suffrage in front of all of the state legislatures across the country. She would even pander to racist politicians in the South who feared that by giving black women the right to vote, they would be outnumbered. Catt also founded the League of Women Voters in 1920, on Valentine's Day. Women of color, especially those in the South, did not have full voting rights. Poll taxes, literacy tests, and reciting the Constitution continued to deliberately keep all black Americans from having these rights until the passage of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. And this is a slide showing the women voting on the left, and that on this date, President Wilson says it is time to support women suffrage. I'd like to talk to you about Alice Paul after this, because in 1923, Alice Paul proposed and wrote the first version of an amendment to the Constitution that prohibited all discrimination on the basis of sex, which is called the Equal Rights Amendment, or the ERA. It wasn't until 1971 that Congress submitted the ERA to the state legislatures with a deadline of March 22, 1979. But only 35 of the 38 states ratified it by then. By 2018, Nevada and Illinois became the 36th and 37th state, and in 2020, Virginia's assembly ratified it. But it remains to be seen whether or not these last three states will be counted, since they ratified it past the deadline. This is the stamp that was issued to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the woman's right to vote. It is a testament to the hard work done by many women to achieve this goal. Remember, your vote counts. I'm going to introduce two women from the League of Women Voters. The first one is Kristen Burke. She is the president of the League of Women Voters of Camden County and also volunteers for several other nonprofit organizations. The second is Corey Kowachiak, who is a senior at Audubon High School and will be attending NGIT in the fall as part of the Newark College of Engineering. She joined the Camden County League in May of 2020.
Hi, I'm Kristen, and as Chris said, I'm representing the League of Women Voters of Camden County, along with Corey, who you'll meet in a minute. We're all about the importance of voting and civic engagement. The League is nonpartisan, which means that we do not support any candidate or endorse any political party, but members of the League do advocate for many important issues, and we continue the fight of the suffragists that you just learned about, the fight to protect the right to vote and encourage participation in the civic process. For the past 100 years, the League of Women Voters has been an active group of people, not just women, making sure no barriers stand in the way of people exercising their right to vote. So we're fighting to empower voters and protect the vote. But why do we even vote? Who does the government belong to? And who do they work for? The government belongs to and works for us, the people. We care for and maintain our republic by taking responsibility and staying informed about our government, and then voting to assert our power. When someone runs for office, they're asking us for a job. We use our vote to pick the person we think is best for the job. And if we give it to them and we don't like their performance, we can use our vote in the future to vote them out of that job. The specifics of registering and casting a vote will be covered in the next section. So very briefly, U.S. citizens 18 years and older can vote. You can even register at age 17 and vote in the first election that comes after you turn 18. Laws and procedures around registration and deadlines can change. So before every election, we advise people to make sure their registration is active by going to nj.gov, contacting your county board of elections, or going to vote411.org, which is run by the League. Once you get to be voting age, you'll start hearing about upcoming elections. Presidential elections are the big ones, every 4 years. But that's not all we vote on. When you hear about a primary, that's basically a vote to pick one person out of a field of candidates who will go on to actually run for the office for their political party. The winners from the primary elections go on to the main event, which are general elections, held months later so that candidates can campaign in the meantime. You might hear some general elections referred to as midterm elections. This simply means the elections that are held 2 years after a presidential election, because it's midway through the president's 4-year term. In a midterm, every single seat in the House of Representatives is up for election because those are 2-year terms. About a third of Senate seats are up as senators serve a 6-year term. Every year there are also state assembly people up for election. There are county level and town level votes, plus Board of Education votes. We'll talk more later about how to feel more prepared to vote in all those elections, but my point right now is to emphasize that your voice, your vote, needs to be used in as many elections as you can participate in. Not just the presidential election every 4 years. Any election that puts someone into position of power should have everyone's input, but often we see primary elections and midterm elections and local elections with turnout well below 50%. That means fewer than half of the voting population is choosing who is in power for everyone who isn't voting. That needs to be flipped so that we are actually electing officials who represent the interests of the majority of voters. Now we'll check in with Corey, who can get more into how to feel confident about your vote.
Thanks, Kristen. You had some great reminders in there about the different types of elections, but a lot of times I talk to my friends and hear people ask, does my vote even matter? The short answer is yes. While it's rare for races to end in a tie or to be decided by just a few votes, it does happen. But more importantly, it's the cumulative power of votes. Each vote adds up. Whenever an elected office flips from one party to another, it's usually a good example of more individuals going out and voting, which makes those races more competitive. Collectively, our votes matter a lot. When candidates look at voting data, they look at where people do and don't vote. If they see that your town, district, or neighborhood has a low turnout, they don't bother coming around to solicit your vote. And when they get into office, they may not worry about the issues that are affecting your community because you didn't bother to vote one way or another. As far as they're concerned, you don't have an opinion. As a result, many communities are underrepresented. The voters do not turn out, so their politicians do not represent them well, and many people may become frustrated with voting or feel unheard by their government. However, this cycle can be broken by turning out for every election, no matter the race. When people don't vote because they think it doesn't make a difference, they give up their power. So hopefully you're excited about voting, an election is coming up, but you suddenly think, I don't know who to vote for. And we understand that finding candidate information is harder than it should be, especially for local races. First, it helps to know what issues you care about. Is it raising minimum wage? Is it criminal justice reform? Is it affordable college, safer schools, the environment? Knowing what's important to you helps you look for where candidates stand on those issues. You can start by going to your county website for a sample ballot to see what the races are and who's running. Then get online and try to find candidate websites or social media accounts to see what they say. Be skeptical, check your sources, and get your news from multiple outlets. The League runs the website vote411.org that was mentioned earlier, where we invite candidates to answer questions so you can compare them side by side. And you can talk to your friends and family, but remember that your vote is your vote, so don't feel pressured to vote one way or another. And at the end of the day, voting is the most important step. No matter which candidate you feel aligns with your views, make sure to turn out to vote to make sure your voice is heard.
That's a great summary, Corey. It's important that you understand right now in high school how crucial voting is and not sit elections out. History has shown that young people don't always vote in great numbers, so your age group gets easily ignored when other people are casting their votes and deciding who gets elected to handle issues that affect your life. But it has to go beyond voting, especially if you're someone who hasn't turned 18 yet and you can't vote. Contacting your representatives to voice your opinion is important. I know a lot of us have anxiety, myself included, about picking up the phone and calling a congressperson's office. But it's easy. Google, who are my representatives? Take a deep breath, dial a number. All you have to do is give your name and zip code so that they know you live in their district, and just say what's on your mind. Please vote yes on this bill about same-day voter registration. Please do more about the polluted river that runs through our town. That's it. 1 minute and you're done. Corey, you recently turned 18. What did you do to feel like you were making a difference, even before you could vote?
The first thing I did was join the League in May of 2020. With the League, I sent postcards to show people how to register to vote. Between summer and fall of 2020, I was able to send 3 batches of postcards out to potential voters. I also posted on my town Facebook page and other social media about Vote 411 and other public League events which provided helpful information, such as our Zoom with Camden County Board of Elections to go over their process when counting votes. I shared the information I learned there with family to boost their confidence in mail-in voting. I also encouraged all of my friends who were 18 and my family members to vote. Tell your younger siblings about voting, make sure your parents or guardians are voting, be a pain, and bug your friends and your friends' parents about voting. It's that important. We hope you walk away today with a different opinion on voting. And when the next election comes up that you can vote in, make sure you have a plan and check your registration status well before Election Day. Get out there and make your voice heard.
Next, we have Nancy Barna, who will be speaking about where to obtain a voter registration application, an application for vote by mail. She will also be explaining how to complete these 2 documents and tell you about important deadlines. Nancy is a past president of GFWC Women's Club of West Deptford and majored in political science. She is a paralegal with the government.
So now I'm going to speak with you about how to obtain a vote-by-mail ballot application and how to obtain a voter registration form. You can go to the office at the West Deptford High School during school hours. You also can call the clerk's office, and you can obtain it by mail by calling 384-4530 or 384-4531 to request a form. You also can go online at the link that is shown on the screen. You can go in person to the old courthouse at 1 North Broad Street on the 1st floor in Woodbury in the old courthouse between the hours of 8:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. Or you can go to the Board of Elections at 550 Grove Road in West Deptford. Now for the form. In box number 1, you can place an X in new registration. Also in box number 1, you can put an X under the political party affiliation that you wish to indicate, unless you wish to be undeclared, in which case you cannot vote in the primary election in June. Box number 2, are you a U.S. citizen? Box number 3, are you at least 17 years old? Box number 4 is your name, last name, first name, middle initial. Box number 5, the date of birth. Box number 6, your gender. Box number 7, New Jersey driver's license, if you have one, or the last 4 digits of your social security number. Box number 8, your home address, your municipality, which is West Deptford Township, the county, which is Gloucester, state of New Jersey, and your zip code. Box number 9 is your mailing address, if that is different than the previous box. Number 10, the last address you were registered to vote in, if that is applicable. Box number 11, your former name, if that is applicable. Box number 12, your daytime phone number and email address. Box number 13, do you wish to declare a party affiliation, either Republican or Democrat, or if you do not wish to be affiliated with a political party? Note, if you're unaffiliated, you cannot vote in the primary election in June, as I previously stated. Box number 14, request for mail-in ballot. If you're going away to college, it's suggested that you use your home address for a mail-in ballot to be mailed to you and have your parent or guardian give it to you to complete and return. Your mailing address in college may change from year to year, so you may not get it in time if you use your college address, or if you transfer to another school, you may not be able to get it either. Then you just sign and date the voter registration form. Now for the vote by mail ballot application. You can also pick that up at West Deptford High School during school hours. You can get it by regular mail by calling the clerk's office in Gloucester County at 384-4530, or you can obtain your vote by mail ballot application online at the link shown below. You can obtain that in person from 8:30 to 4:30 Monday to Friday, also at the old courthouse on 1 North Broad Street, first floor in Woodbury, or at the Board of Elections at 550 Grove Road in West Deptford. On the vote by mail application, ballot application, number 1, check as desired all future elections or November, June municipal elections, which is not applicable in West Deptford. The school elections are held in West Deptford. You'll want to check that off. It's also held in West Deptford in November. The fire and special election box, you don't check that off because that's not applicable to West Deptford. We do not have fire elections. Box number 2 is your name. Box number 3, your address. Box number 4, mail my ballot to. Your home address, again, as I stated earlier. If you're in college, your address may change from year to year, so use your home address as where you want your vote by mail ballot to go. Box number 6, daytime phone number. 7, your email address. 8, your signature. Box number 9, the date. Box number 10, assister. Only complete this if someone is helping you assist in completing the application for vote by mail. Box number 11, authorized messenger. The person delivering your application for vote by mail must complete, sign, and show their own identification if they are delivering it in person to the clerk of Gloucester County for you. Dates and deadlines. The deadline to request a vote by mail ballot is 7 days prior to Election Day. Check your sample ballot to see where your district polling place is, or if you can call the Board of Elections at 384-4531 to find out. The polls are open Election Day from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Your completed vote by mail ballots must be received at the Board of Elections by the close of polls on Election Day, which is 8 p.m. in West Deptford. Your vote by mail ballots cannot be dropped off at the polling place on Election Day. However, you can drop them off in person at the Gloucester County Board of Election on Grove Road on Election Day before 8 p.m. Please note again that the ballots must be received in there by that time, not postmarked. Primary election is held the first Tuesday after the first Monday in June. Call to be sure that your voter registration form was received by calling 384-4531 or 384-4530. The general election is held the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. In West Deptford, the Board of Education election is also held at the general election in November. Board of Education candidate names may be printed on the back of your sample ballot, and they will be located in a different column in the voting booth than the political candidates. Please remember to vote.